said you were going to be here at 7:30, and I said, well, if he's going to be that late, we'll just start, and then you can come in like the breath of fresh air, like Susie Chapstick. You just ski down the mountain.
Breath and fresh air go together like Kmart quality when it comes to me. I don't think that's going to happen.
Kmart. How do you know that's not our new sponsor, Katz?
Sorry about that.
Mark Maron and Stephen Wright on the WTF podcast were talking about Boston comedy, and Stephen Wright brought up Play It Again, Sam's, and Mark Maron said your name, and Stephen Wright said, he's such a nice guy. Wow. He's such a nice guy.
Wow.
And then
I have so many stories from there. Like Mark Maron, I believe.
He wanted to say bad things about you, but couldn't, and said nice things about you. But you know Mark operates with a permanent cloud over his head at all times. He'd be the first to say it about himself.
It's hard to do.
Not if you're him. I said, what is it with you? He said, it's just genetic doubt.
Oh,
that's a great explanation. But he goes, cats. Nah, I got no problem with cats. But Mark Maron saying I got no problem with cats is like being coronated.
I feel good about that. I feel like I gave him his first stage time at a comedy club because I believe he was going to Emerson College, as Stephen did. And he used to come for the open mic nights. And I remember it was one of his first bits was himself getting high and on this really strong kind of drug that was in his marijuana. And he opened up the refrigerator and Jerry Garcia was there having a conversation with him. I honestly remember that vividly.
Must have locked him in there.
And
how the hell? He's lucky he wasn't frozen to death.
And that's how he lost his finger.
That's it.
Jerry Garcia, it was frostbite from Mark Maron's refrigerator. Katz has never met Uncle Dan. Here you are.
This is good. We met at the wedding. What are you talking about?
I meant in this land.
I always get fascinated by, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's like physically you guys can't see Uncle Dan. But, you know, there's something about a guy, first of all,
that looks like Dennis Farina.
That looks like Dennis Farina if he were
it's a curse.
If he were your relative. But there's something when you're face to face with a guy who has a mustache in 2012.
I almost shaved it too.
And it's like literally about 3/8 of an inch on each side from being Hitler.
Yeah.
It's a very unique thing when you see that because you're such a lovable guy. But
I would love to have a Hitler mustache for one day.
Why don't you do it? What's stopping you?
I don't know.
Remember the comic, and I forget his name. And
you're saying that's almost a Hitler mustache?
No, I said 3/4 of an inch on each side, and it could be like 3/8 of an inch on each side. It could be Hitler.
That mustache goes past the width of his lips.
Well, not from this angle.
So you're really mocking his face.
No,
he's not mocking.
I'm not mocking him at all.
He's mocking your face.
Wait a minute, Bomb Pop.
There was a comic who wrote for. There was a comic who wrote for Seinfeld, and he said one of his greatest comedy lines, and I forget his name, and I'm sorry. I apologize to you, whoever you are.
He just looked up to the heavens like the guy died.
He had this great line. He said, Hitler, I get upset of a lot of things that Hitler did, but the one thing I get upset at is he ruined that mustache for everybody.
That's true.
Tom
It's
Tom
comic.
Hurts.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. That's his joke. He goes, he ruined that look for everybody. What if Elvis had the Hitler mustache and Hitler went with the big sideburns? That's him. That's Tom Hurts.
Good look.
Yeah, I love Tom.
And he said also, I remember about taking the toll, like it's just so depressing. They should hire monkeys, because at least when you give your money over to the monkey in the toll booth, at least you get to feel that neat leathery monkey hand. That was the whole thing. So the very quiet, calm, black hair part on the side.
Yeah, and Tom became a showrunner and ran a bunch of great television shows and still does. He's pretty amazing.
So we were talking about reality shows. Uncle Dan said he'd want to be on Ice Road Truckers. If you could be on any reality show, Katz. By the way, Wendy Liebman was here, and she said it's like her dream to be on Dancing with the Stars. But she said she doesn't think she's famous enough. But she wrote them like letters, like campaigned, and then they had Margaret Cho on. So she thinks maybe she helped open that door for them. So maybe we can get Wendy Liebman on Dancing with the Stars.
I don't know. Jeff Ross was on Dancing with the Stars. I think Wendy Liebman can make it.
Well, push it through for her. She said nice things about you.
I like her.
Get a piece of that action. The money, I mean.
Another Boston person.
Wendy?
Yeah.
Long Island, but then Boston. Everybody went to Emerson. What is it about Emerson where everybody funny goes there?
Don't ask me. I don't know.
I remember I went to Emerson.
Where is Emerson?
It's right behind you. Look out.
Woonsocket?
It's right in the... the Fenway area of
yeah,
Boston by Boston
Now
University.
I know where it
by
is.
where the three streets come together. I remember I wanted to take
Three
a class
Stooges with you two.
at Emerson College when I started doing open mic nights, so I took a class from Steve Sweeney, who was a Boston comic, great Boston comic, to give you guys some insight into what Boston comedy was like in the 80s. Steve Sweeney was selling out 3 shows a night on Friday at Nick's Comedy Stop. 400 people a show, 1,200
room.
seats every Friday night all year long. That's how big.
Wow.
No one does that anywhere in the country like that. So I go take the class, and because I want to know more about comedy, and so I'm really excited about it. And I go, and we have that thing in any comedy class where you do your material, and he brings a comedian in to watch, and he brought Mike McDonald from Boston. Now, not the Mike McDonald from Canada, the Mike McDonald from Boston, had long hair, and he kind of talked like this.
Not the nicest guy in the world.
He was kind of a slightly angry guy, but he was a really great comic.
Uncle Dan's a real angry
really
guy.
strong.
Kind of. That guy, he should have wore a Hitler mustache, that guy.
That's right. There
Mike
you go.
McDonald?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I go and I do my thing, and I write this bit that I thought was a very innovative bit. I wrote a bit. I can't believe I remember this because this is like 30 years ago.
Well, I remember the rapping cow, so have at it.
I wrote a bit where I said, Hawaii Five-0 is my favorite show.
I remember this. This is a good bit. I've heard you do this bit. I love it.
The music is macho. Then you got those macho names. Steve McGarrett, Jack Lord as Steve McGarrett, John MacArthur as Dano, and then I was like, then it gets weird. Cam Fong as Chin Ho, Zulu as Kono. I'm like, where the fuck did they get their names? Why did they change their names? It's like
That's a
it
great
doesn't even
bit.
make any sense.
What are their names? What's the first guy?
Cam Fong as Chin Ho,
Cam
Zulu as
Fong.
Kono.
Hold on, don't rush that. That's hysterical. Cam Fong as Chin-Ho. That's like when there's a dog on a show. I'm not comparing those men to dogs, but when there's a dog on the show, they go, and Skip as Buster.
Yeah, so and I'm like, and then I had a further bit. I said they always gave, it was a racist show because they always gave the Hawaiian guys the shitty jobs. It would be like, Jack would be like, hey, there's a homicidal rapist on the island. Dano, let's get a cup of coffee. Chin, get a dress, walk down Maui Boulevard.
You know what? He just might have just spiked back up to 100%, Uncle Dan. You haven't said one bit.
99.8.
So wait,
You haven't said
but I
one
want to share
bit.
this with you. So I do this bit.
You said no funny things.
Shut
You
up.
will. You got time. Don't worry about it. So
Patronizing now.
So the crowd
He's in your head.
Don't let him get in your head.
Yeah.
So the crowd in this classroom goes crazy. It's like all these people watched my set and they were like applauding, like giving me a standing ovation. And then Mike stands up. He's like, "Hey, pal, I don't know where you came from, but I do a Hawaii Five-0 bit.
Oh.
So you can't do that fucking bit in town because you'll be stealing it from me." I'm like, okay, man, no problem. I just wrote it today. I just thought it'd be a great bit. He
And
said,
you had never
"You
seen him
can't
do stand-up?
Never seen him do
And was
stand-up.
his bit that bit, or did he just...
No.
I bet it was after that day.
Yeah.
I guarantee you he did
Yeah.
that bit.
I don't know.
I would bet
I saw him
$1.
I saw him do it one
Maybe
time when I
tucking
was
your
doing a show with him. He did it just to show me he was doing it, and
Yeah, you know what he was doing? Workshopping it.
I think that's one of the most depressing things for a comic when you're doing it is like, and we're going to talk about this a bit, but I think it's fascinating. It's like because you're in a comedy club and you see a comedian do something that might be close to you, and you're violently like upset about it. But then there's the other side where a comic just comes up to you after you have a great set and you've never seen him before, and he comes up to you and said, "Hey, pal, I just want to tell you that's my bit. If I'd appreciate it if you don't do it anymore." And even though like it shouldn't, it cuts you like a knife because you think to yourself, "Oh my God, I didn't steal this. I didn't take it," and it's really disturbing because a lot of comics think that they can't get by with it. Like when Dane Cook and Louis C.K. went through their thing that they went through, and I was really involved in
For
it.
the listeners and for Uncle Dan, Dane Cook and Louis C.K. had similar bits about if I have a kid, I'm going to give him a real cool name. Like, you can name your kid anything.
Yeah.
Why not name him something neat? And so just letting Uncle Dan know and let the listeners know so they're not like, what is he talking about? And in my opinion, I think it happens a lot. There's only there's only 12 notes you can play. Like I think there's parallel bit writing that happens all the time. So.
Yeah, it happens a lot, and I
Parallel
feel
universes.
Yeah, and I felt
ESP.
like uniquely qualified because I had represented Louis. Louis was one of the first comedian I ever represented when he was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was 17 years
the
old.
The first managerial client you ever had.
I ever had. I loved him. He was an open micer in Boston, and I remember I started representing him. And the first thing, one of the biggest things that I did, which I was so proud of, is I booked him for 10 shows with Jerry Seinfeld, opening up for Jerry Seinfeld.
What's the deal with Louis C.K.?
Which we'll get into Jerry in a second. But his
last name is the letter C, period, the letter K, period.
And Dane I represented, of course, for about 17 years. So this happened, and first of all, any comic doesn't like to see an album cover with another comic walking off the stage of Madison Square Garden with a smile on his face with 15,000 people screaming in the background. It doesn't make another comic happy, especially one that's been working for 25 years and still working at the
Why wouldn't it?
Improv at Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Talking about somebody specific?
Talking about any comic.
Okay.
Because nobody's rooting for somebody when they pass them in the arc.
I root for everyone that I can understand. Like Brian Regan doing 2,500-seat theaters. Go, brother. Who can you root for more than that guy?
Well,
But then there's other people.
This is why I think you
that I won't say their names, where I truly have no idea what they're talking about when they're on stage. It's almost like a tuning fork that's not for my ears, like a dog whistle act.
Well, in music, some people love Barry Manilow and some people like Nine Inch Nails, so it's like...
Dan, where do you stand on that?
Nine Inch Nails and Barry Manilow.
Really?
They had to, they had to put them together on an album, I think. Barry Manilow sings Nine Inch Nails, or Nine Inch Nails sings Barry Manilow.
I think it'd be better Barry Manilow doing 9 Inch Nails.
Why can't they do a duet?
I don't think so. That's right. That would be a duet, just like David Bowie and Bing Crosby.
Doesn't it make you feel better?
Let me tell you something. The craft service here is amazing.
That's for you. My wife just made those Blue Nana muffins.
That is going to... I can't get rid of this extra inch, but I'm going to have that.
Go ahead.
So the stealing thing with Dane was the fact that there were actually 92 seconds of material that was similar to Louis C.K.'s act. And representing both of them, I'm not taking one side or another because I'm just realistically, unbiasedly.
Well, on the fence, Katz. That's always been your nickname.
So at the time, Dane Cook had over 7 hours of documented comedy bits that were either on albums or DVDs or specials, and 92 seconds.
How many hours did Louis have? Same, probably.
No, but a lot. Probably like 3 or 4 hours. But the point being, the bits were the sound effect bit, which I can't do, which George Carlin did and Steve Martin did about 25 years earlier. There was another bit about an itchy asshole. So in other words, what I said...
Everybody does that bit.
So what I said...
Nick DiPaolo's got the best one. He said, my ass is so sore and itchy, I could wipe it with a live rabbit. It wouldn't work.
Jeez.
Nick
Don't
DiPaolo.
try it, though.
He said, I could wipe my ass with a live rabbit. It wouldn't do any good.
So the point I'm trying to make is, like I said...
I like that guys are arguing over about a fucking itchy
I know,
ass
that was
bit.
the whole point. I said, Dane is saying, if the country and Louis C.K. believes that the reason why you're selling out Madison Square Garden twice in one night and Boston Garden twice in one night is because of a 41-second itchy asshole bit, then we're all in trouble. I mean, nobody. And the point is, if somebody does a bit of yours on stage, it's actually flattering. And if you're a great prolific writer, you'll be able to write more and more and more, and no one will ever be able to steal from you or do something. And the comics that you can. There's comics that are well known, like Brian Regan. You can't steal a bit from Brian Regan the way his style is. Stephen Wright, very hard. Even a guy who's not as well known, Kirk Fox. You can't take a bit from Kirk Fox. There's no way anybody would even know.
Nobody would know anyway.
What the...
He might not even know.
There you go.
He might say, I thought that was my bit, but I guess
Who's
it
Kirk
isn't.
Fox?
Exactly. He's a very talented
I've never
comedian.
heard.
He's been regular on Community and Parks and Recreation.
Let's get him on the show.
Oh, he's
Hi, Kirk. How are you? I'm embarrassed. The name didn't even ring a bell, and I apologize.
You got to get him on the show and say all his bits. They're yours.
I'm going to get him on the show.
20 years.
Stop pulling the mic away from your mouth when you talk. I'm going to get him on the show, Kirk Fox. I'm going to have Kirk Fox, Louis C.K.
Just did it, too.
I'm going to have Kirk Fox, Louis C.K., and Dane Cook on the show at the same time and tell them it's our 1-year celebration of the itchy ass routine. It's an itchy ass bit night. And I'm just going to say we're all just going to go around the room and do our itchy ass bits. I'll talk about baby powder on my butt and pancakes coming out of my pants because it's too hot out. So Katz apparently...
He was going to Emerson College, as Stephen did, and he used to come for the open mic nights. And I remember it was one of his first bits was himself getting high and on this really strong kind of drug that was in his marijuana, and he opened up the refrigerator, and Jerry Garcia was there having a conversation with him. I honestly remember that vividly.
Must have locked him in there.
And
how the hell? He's lucky he wasn't frozen to death.
And
that's how he lost his finger.
That's it.
Jerry Garcia, it was frostbite from Mark Maron's refrigerator. Katz has never met him.
I believe...
He wanted to say bad things about you, but couldn't, and said nice things about you. But you know Mark operates with a permanent cloud over his head at all times. He'd be the first to say it about himself.
It's hard to do.
Not if you're him. I said, what is it with you? He said, it's just genetic doubt.
Oh,
that's a great explanation. But he goes, Katz. Nah, I got no problem with Katz. But Mark Maron saying I got no problem with Katz is like being coronated.
I feel good about that. I feel like I gave him his first stage time at a comedy club because I believe
Uncle Dan, here you are.
This is good.
We met at the wedding. What are you talking about?
I meant in this land.
I always get fascinated by. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's like physically you guys can't see Uncle Dan, but you know there's something about a guy. First of all,
that looks like Dennis. That looks like Dennis Farina.
That looks like Dennis Farina if he were
it's a curse.
If he were your relative. But there's something when you're face to face with a guy who has a mustache in 2012.
I almost shaved it
and it's like literally about 3/8 of an inch on each side from being Hitler.
Yeah.
It's a very unique thing when you see that because you're such a lovable guy. But
I would love to have a Hitler mustache for one day.
Why don't you do it? What's stopping you?
I don't know.
Remember the comic, and I forget his name. And
you're saying that's almost a Hitler mustache?
No, I said 3/4 of an inch on each side, and it could be like 3/8 of an inch on each side. It could be Hitler.
That mustache goes past the width of his lips.
Well, not from this angle.
So you're really mocking his face.
No,
he's not mocking.
I'm not mocking him at all.
He's mocking your face.
Wait a minute, bomb pop.
There was a comic who wrote for. There was a comic who wrote for Seinfeld, and he said one of the.
Said you were going to be here at 7:30, and I said, well, if he's going to be that late, we'll just start, and then you can come in like the breath of fresh air. Like Susie Chapstick, you just ski down the mountain.
Breath and fresh air go together like Kmart quality when it comes to me. I don't think that's going to happen.
Kmart. How do you know that's not our new sponsor, Katz?
Sorry about that.
Mark Maron and Stephen Wright on the WTF podcast. We're talking about Boston comedy, and Stephen Wright brought up Play It Again Sam's, and Mark Maron said your name, and Stephen Wright said, he's such a nice guy. Wow. He's such a nice guy.
Wow.
And then
I have so many stories from there, like Mark Maron.